Hello everyone, Manix here. Welcome to this Polymer clay tutorial video. I know this is completely random coming from me, but this has been some long time coming. So for this tutorial, we're going to make like an original creation that I had drawn like a while ago, maybe a year ago. And so yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video. Right now we're making the base that we will use to build everything else on, and so this base, usually I make it out of black, but since I had more white and I was actually going to use black for the actual sculpture, I decided to use white instead for the base because you're not going to see it in the end anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I used this metal beam right there to like construct it higher and higher so that it's stable, and eventually when this whole frame is done, it's going to get hardened in the oven, and so then I can work on it without having to worry about anything collapsing because of gravity. That's the first step of the clay tutorial, and that's how I start all my clay tutorials, or no, that's how I start all my clay sculptures, is with a frame usually made out of black clay. All the songs in this video are brought to you by my friend Nick. The SoundCloud and video links will all be in the description, so if you want to check them out, they'll be there. So yeah, thanks Nick. Alright, so after oven hardening of the clay, I put it to 275 degrees for 15 minutes so that it's hardened and I can work on it. And so the next step after that is to make the clay that I will use for the eye. Originally, like you saw, I had like all the colors of the rainbow to make like a rainbowish clay, but I mixed it a bit too much and I think I had a bit more red. Even though you can still see it, it's not really what the color I intended. So next I also have the eye that I'm doing, like the actual pupil itself, and you can see here that it's like one pupil, but eventually I'll change that. Right now I'm just adding some details, but eventually I change the eye because I think it's too bland. Instead of making it one pupil, I decided to make it a bunch inside one because I thought that would be more creative and it would look nicer, and it turned out to look a lot nicer than having just one generic pupil. Alrighty, now I'm showcasing the color palette I will be using for this sculpture, along with the two eyes I sculpted off camera so that you wouldn't have to watch me do the same thing twice. And so now we are actually starting the detailing of the actual sculpture, starting with one of the eyes that I will put at the top and the other one will go at the bottom. But first I wanted to know where to place the eye so I can decorate everything around that. to do the actual teeth of this sculpture, and I decided for the teeth's color, I didn't want to make it white because that'd be too boring, and I wanted to make it something that would contrast, or that would be contrasting to the actual color palette, so I decided to make it like an orange to contrast the saturated blue. Originally I planned to make it a saturated yellow, but eventually I came with this color and I'm like, I'll just use that instead. But yeah, it turned out nicer than I expected, and right now I'm just doing the teeth on the side detailing, and I also will be doing detailing with teeth on the top and bottom so it can give it some more contrast. Now I just tried something new to do some little texturing at the top to make this sort of like pinkish blob turn into a brain. So I just jabbed it a few times with a sculpting tool, and it turned out to look more like a brain, and yeah, that was a cool little detail I just wanted to talk about. Now we are doing the detail on the back side of the eyeball, and for this part I decided to try something new, and I just took a bunch of like blue clay and I ripped it apart into little pieces, as you probably saw there, to add some like deteriorating skin. And so now I'm just adding some more details to the back side along with the teeth on the back. Just like the top side, at the bottom side, I'm starting with the eye, placing it where I think it should go, and then doing all the detailing around that eye. So I decided to place this eye in the back instead of the front for some more variation.
So with the whole picture, that is fundamental. You've got to let go.
Part of the sculpture is decorating the ground slash the scenery around the creation itself. And so for all of my sculptures, I want the ground to be complementing slash having a contrasting color for the actual sculpture's palette itself. And so for this, I wanted to have like a yellowish red, but instead it turned out to be more reddish than yellow, so I just worked around that. And so because the color palette was blue, I wanted to make it yellow, but instead it just turned out to be, it turned out a nicer color than I expected. And now I'm doing texturing on the actual ground itself. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but I just like how it looks, and that's how I've done all my sculptures, with this same texturing on the ground. After that, I add pebbles to the ground to give it more detail and to make it more dynamic, and I'm also texturing the pebbles and rocks in the same way I texture the ground. Now for my only big mistake with this project is the actual tentacles. I thought that having one wire shoved deep into the eyeball would be able to hold the weight of itself, of the clay that will be on it, but it turned out in the end that it didn't, so I had to sort of work around that. How I could have solved this prior to this would have been to, when I made the base, the frame, the white frame, I could have also added the tentacles to that frame, but then it would have been harder to detail the rest. Or the second thing I could have done, which I don't think would have worked either way because the clay is too soft, the eyeball clay is too soft, I could have had two wires instead of just one intertwined with each other. As you can see, I have 4 tentacles, but I decided to remove one due to being lazy to decorate all of them and thinking that it wouldn't be able to hold the weight of 4 tentacles on both sides. So I thought just for safety measures, I would just make 3 instead of 4 tentacles. As you can see, the final step is to add details to the tentacles themselves, and after that we will be ready for the oven baking. my sculptures prior to making this one. So the first one is Twisted Foxy. It was just, I thought it'd be a fun way to start. And in my opinion, for being my first one, I think I did a pretty good job. There are some things I wish I didn't do or like did better, but of course that was my first one, so I learned from that. My second one was an original creation that I also had planned to be on YouTube, but I deleted. I had the footage got deleted, so that's a big rip. So with all my sculptures, I put them in the oven to bake for 25 minutes at 230 degrees Fahrenheit. And usually that's enough time for it to harden and stick all together so that nothing breaks apart at the end. The final working step is to add gloss to everything, and I just spray paint it all with gloss. I could like paint it on in the specific areas that I like, but I just prefer having the entire thing glossy and shiny instead. So yeah guys, here's the final product. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and the sculpture itself. I'm gonna do a 360 turn like slowly so you guys can see it while I talk about like the process. And so I actually plan to have 8 like appendages for this project, but instead I thought that 1, that would be too much, and 2, it would just not be as like stable with all of those. And as you can already see here, I probably should have made supports for these things, but they didn't stay up during the baking process, so it just turned out a bit limp. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, it's just not the stance I wish it was in. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more polymer clay creations in the future. Alright, see ya.